Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our program today. You may know that Family Talk is a listener-supported program, and we remain on the air by your generosity, literally. If you can help us financially, we would certainly appreciate it. God's blessings to you all.
Today on Family Talk.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer once said, "Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." Well, today you'll hear from a woman who lived by that motto and spoke up against the evil of her time. You're listening to Family Talk, and our guest is someone you've heard from before, Deet Eman. She's a Holocaust survivor who was imprisoned by the Nazis for helping Jews escape Western Europe. Deet has a powerful testimony, which she tells in her book called Things We Couldn't Say. Today, you'll hear a classic conversation featuring Deet Eman and our own Dr. James Dobson that was recorded some years ago. She describes her repulsive life in a concentration camp and explains why she fought for those who were persecuted. It's a riveting broadcast that displays God's love through extreme suffering and hardship. Here now is Dr. James Dobson to further introduce today's guest. You're listening to Family Talk, a production of the James Dobson Family Institute.
The people who are listening to us on the radio have heard your testimony, many of them, when you've talked about your experiences in wartime Holland and the atrocities of the Nazis and so on. As you think back on that era, do you deal with bitterness? I know that you became friends with Corrie ten Boom, great Christian lady, later after the war. And I know that the Lord had to deal with her hatred, or at least the temptation to hate. And he forgave her for that hatred, and she learned to forgive those oppressors, the Gestapo and so on. Did you go through that as well?
When everybody was being killed, yes. And in our family, we lost a lot of people. My oldest brother and uncles and aunts and so many. My sister's fiancé, my fiancé. And then you are very bitter and full of hatred. But you know, you need some time. And then you start thinking. And then slowly I got to the conclusion that when I see injustice, I get fanatic. I get really... Yeah. Upset. My hair goes up. And I thought, here I am with my character, which is getting very mad when I see injustice. And then I thought, I grew up in a Christian home, a Christian family. We knew the Bible. And the border of Germany is so close by. What would have happened to me if I had been born on the other side of the border, in a home where they did not know God? And the young people in Germany were at 12, 13, 14 taken by Hitler, forced, if they wanted or not. And they most liked it, but they had all to go in the Hitler Youth. And there for years they got beautiful uniforms, they were trained in weapons and in everything. And for day after day, year after year, they were indoctrinated. The Jews are to blame for everything, the Jews are to blame. And they were brainwashed. Yeah. And they were ready to do, they were willing to do. I heard that the SS was trained in cruelty. That were the volunteers, that when they started to study for the SS, they got a little German shepherd puppy, and they had 3 years, I think. So your dog becomes your friend. Yes. At their examen, with their own hands, they had to kill the dog and break his neck. They were trained in cruelty. And I think if that was the training of all the young people in Germany, what would have happened if I had been born there, did not know God, but by the grace of God, I might have been a fanatic Nazi.
Now, you didn't think that through when you were in prison.
Not in prison. Yeah, this came slowly later.
Yes.
It needs time. It needs time.
It is incredible that you and Corrie and others were able to forgive, considering what you went through. Did you ever encounter anyone inside the prison from the other side, the Gestapo and the prison guards, who showed any humanity or any sense of shame or regret for what was being done to you?
in the concentration camp, there was a 19-year-old beautiful girl, and she was married to a man of 27, and Ansje, and she was beautiful. And they were 6 months married, and they were arrested. They had helped allies, and they found it out. So Ansje was in my berg and slept close by in one of the rows. And I was afraid that Ansje would go crazy. And then Ansje had her birthday, I never forget, August 7. And in the distance we saw all purple flowers. And we had sometimes to march in the camp street. And there was one guard, and he was an Austrian. I got to know his name, Herr Krause. And when he saw us march, he looked with pity. So I think maybe he was called.
That's as close as anyone came to
he
saying,
looked
I'm sorry.
friendly, and he looked kind of sad. That I thought, you have some feeling. And you know what I did the evening before Ansje's birthday? The windows were all open. We had no showers, we had only no change of clothing, so it was warm, and we didn't have clean clothing, so the windows were open. Maybe otherwise it would have smelled, 175 women. But I took a chance, and he was on duty. And he stood at the corner, and I said, Herr Krause. And he came close by, and I said, remember that beautiful girl, Ansje? And he knew who we were. He said, yes. I said, she has her birthday tomorrow. Will you please pick a purple flower? And he did it, and he gave me a half-rotten potato, and I hollowed it out and stuck the flower in it, and out of my sock I pulled some wool, and I made 3 holes and hung it, and when Ansje was asleep, and we all slept over each other, I hung it on the mat, on the wire of the bed above her, and when she woke up the next morning, she had her pot of flowers.
Oh, my.
And so this man had feeling.
Did she survive the war?
She did, but he didn't. She was a widow at 20.
Oh, my.
And she later married another resistance fighter. And he had been in so deep, and he couldn't handle it. I visited her still later, years later. And she told me that this man, her second husband, couldn't handle it. And he was in deep depressions. Yeah. You know what the crazy thing was? We survivors felt kind of guilty for him.
Yeah.
Have you heard that before?
Oh, yes. It's very common in combat for those who have friends and officers
guilty.
who are killed, and they come home whole or come home at all and feel like somehow that they have no right to be alive.
And this man had it so strong, and she told me it was terrible. Mm-hmm. She lived on a flat, an apartment building, beautiful, the 6th floor. And on a Sunday morning, she said, I went downstairs to get the paper. And her husband had jumped out of the window, and he was lying there dead. So she has had a lot. And I heard of several of my friends who, after the war, not the people from the camp, who couldn't handle it anymore, started drinking and so. So that was.
You told about having to wash the clothes that were bloody. Explain again for our radio audience what happened there.
That was the hardest thing. When I found out that these were executed men, and I found it out via spy, then I started looking for the bullet holes. And I had to wash it. And we had to, blood you have to soak in cold water. So the troughs in which we had to work to wash ourselves, I had to fill with water and a plug in, and then throw those bloody clothes in. And that was all blood of our Dutch young men. Most of them hadn't even had a trial. And then I started looking if I saw names I knew, and I tried to memorize them that I could later tell the family maybe. And then I looked where the bullet holes were, and that is when I got so angry, because the Geneva Convention that all the countries had signed said, if you have to execute a person, it has to be done by 3 people, by machine guns, and on the heart level. And I found that nobody ever knows I did it. You know, that's to protect each, and that it goes fast. And I found bullet holes here low in their intestines, which meant that they had been lying there for hours and bleeding to death. And then I reported it to the Red Cross when I came out, and later there was a trial, and I think like in Nuremberg and so. But I mean, there was such a cruelty that, I mean, I was filled with
It's
hate.
really difficult to imagine a people that cruel and that lacking in any kind of sensitivity. I understand what you just said about the training and the indoctrination, but we're human after all, and it is very hard for me to understand how that could have occurred. I mean, to take innocent people and subject them to such torture and such misery and then death.
You know what I think? That we humans are much worse than animals, and that are the people without God. But when we don't have God, an animal kills to eat. Without God, I think we are capable of anything. Really?
Yeah. Deed, explain how you felt when you were suddenly released, that the Germans had bought your story. It was a lie that you had concocted, and you made it sound plausible, and they let you go. That was 1944. And you walked out of there free lady. I mean, you were still sick, you were miserable, you were ragged, and you know, your future was very much in doubt, and yet you walked out of there free. What was that like?
I was let out with another girl, and that was when Corrie and Betsy were brought to Ravensbrück, and Patton was close
tin
by.
booms.
That was all in the end of August 44. And then a few weeks later was that thing, the bridge too far, the Battle of Arnhem.
Oh, yeah.
Just before that, I got out. And I had said to a lady who said, Willie, if you want to get out, if you would get out, what day would you want? And I said, if I may choose, I said, I wanted a bright, sunshiny day, and I would like it to be a Saturday morning, and then you can take a soak bath and shampoo your hair and clean underwear and clean clothes, and Sunday go to church and thank God for freedom. I said, but if it's pouring and it's Monday morning, I'll go too. And you know what happened? 2 weeks later, on a radiant Saturday morning, I was called out by one of the cruelest wachters, and she said, you go to Germany. And deep down there was a little voice that said, no, you're going out.
To be sent to Germany was a death sentence.
That was practically, at that time, a death sentence. But that little voice, and then another Ansje, also widow, she didn't know it, they heard it later. Her husband had been shot the night before. She was called, and the two of us were marched to another part as where we had come in, and they opened the gate, and there was nothing but sand. Everywhere sand and trees, and no path, only 2 wheel tracks and some horse manure. And they had been so cruel, and we stood there and very undernourished, and we had to walk. And which way do we go? And we wanted to get away. We thought they might open the gates again and say, big joke, back in. Yeah. So, and then we saw a little dot in the distance, and we started walking. And this was the last year of the war, 44, and our farmers had never had any fertilizer, and there was nothing anymore. So they, for years, they always collected all the manure from the horses, the pigs, and the cows, and everything. And when the pit that they put it in was full, they pumped it in a wooden cart, and those carts, they spread all the stuff out over the field. But they never scrubbed that cart. In a few days, they did it again. And this was such a cart filled to the brim with you know what, manure, and a terrific smell. And the farmer was walking next to it, and there was a seat behind the horse. But in 4 years, never scrubbed. It was caked on anywhere and everywhere. Yeah. And then he saw us, and we were then young girls. He said, girls, you just came out of the camp. And he said, yes. And he didn't know if he should offer us the seat because it was caked on with you know what. But to us, I said, it was a Cadillac. And we said, yes, please. He said, hop on. And he brought us to the railway station, and there was the post of the Red Cross. We got bread. But when I was sitting on that car, I had given all my clothes away. I had only a raincoat and underwear because I thought, they go now to Germany. It was near September. So I was sitting there. And I was thinking, God is faithful, and He is love, and I think He has a sense of humor. Because isn't that a glorious exit out of a prison and on a manure car?
Your parents had been praying for you all this time.
Oh, I think that callous is on their knees.
Why did they let you out?
I think I acted so super stupid that I think, and I had my little kicks out of that. When they talked to me, I stood like that and my mouth half open. I don't know what you're saying. Can you speak Dutch? That I think they did not have enough trains. And they brought the majority of the camp to Ravensbrück, Corrie and Betsy. They shot the men. They let the widows out because the men were shot. So, and I think that they had a list. It is, of course, God in the end. But I think that when they came to me, that they say, Willie Lyman, she's a border case. she's too stupid to do anything, and that they let me out for that. And then I went back. I had seen the evil, and I went full blast back. So many were arrested, so I jumped right in it. And there were no trains anymore. The Queen had said, don't use the trains. Every train will be shot by Spitfires. Don't take trucks. Don't do any bikes. If a German was walking, they've done it 5 times to me. Halt, your bike. And I had always dangerous stuff on me, so I gave it. And one time I didn't have dangerous stuff, so I said, no. And he took his revolver and he shot it right next to my shoe. And he said, the next one, go in. So you give your back. And I walked the Netherlands. You've been there. I've walked from The Hague to Amsterdam. I've walked from Amsterdam to Amersfoort. Every day my rucksack on. I think that's why I'm now so fit. I walk the ball. And then sometimes you were so tired. And I said to myself, if you just put one foot in front of the other one and you keep doing that, you get there. But, it was really amazing. I mean, it was a very strange time.
Why did you go back into the battle? When you knew what awaited you, you knew that many of the people that you had been in prison with had either been shot or sent to Germany, which is worse in some ways. And they let you out kind of on a fluke, and you go right back into the resistance. What kind of woman are you? You were only 22, 23 at that time? I don't understand what you're made out of.
No, I had seen the evil. I had seen so much evil that everything in me wanted to do something against it. And then when I was walking the whole Netherlands, people from front spionage, a guy that I knew, he knew me, and he came, he said, Diet, you are walking the whole Netherlands. Would you be willing to do spying for the government? I said, sure. And they gave me big maps with the area where I worked, every tree, every wall, and degrees. And then I had to make reports if I saw troop movements and if I saw ships in harbors and if I saw that they were building fortifications. And then you had to measure, coordinate the degrees, and I'd make reports, and that went to the front. I got a little thank you note for front spionage. So after that evil experience, I wanted to do anything to get them out of our country.
Well, the courage and the bravery that you showed, you don't think of yourself as a heroine, do you? I do, and a lot of other people do. Why do you not?
No, because I think the heroes, and I hate it when they use that word, were in Germany. Those in the lines then, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Martin Niemöller. And I heard a few years ago that in Berlin, so many Christians hid the Jews. To me, that are the heroes. That they had to rise up against their own government. But this power had marched in our country. I was furious. They had no right to be there. They touched our Jewish people, since 1600 and the Reformation and the persecution from the Portuguese Jews, that they had lived in the night. They were Dutch citizens. They had a right to be there. And here they come and they start torturing our people. I was mad. And I mean, apart from this, I still wanted to do something to get them out. And then that's God's will too. You can't let that they touch the apple of his eye. So it was combined, my indignation against all the evil, and that they had such a arrogance and power. And it's clearly, I mean, in every war they always say God is on our side. But this was so evil that I knew God was on our side. Definitely not on the Nazi side. And this you could say. In other wars, I'm not always sure.
You lost your brother. He died in a Japanese concentration camp.
He was in a terrible prison in near Bandung, the Sukamiskin, and nobody got out of that prison.
They tortured him to death. How do you know that?
Because we had many people, family, who had jobs in Indonesia, and they were all put in camps, but he had seen a chance to smuggle a little note out. And they heard later from others there was one guy that I met who had come out of that camp, and he nearly apologized to me. And I said, did you know he came out of the Sukamiskin? And I was decorated by Prince Bernhard, and 39 people from whole America had to come to the Dutch embassy in Washington, and we all got a resistance medal. And then we had an evening meal in the Army and Navy club. It was very beautiful. And I sat next to this man, and the people from Indonesia speak staccato. Well, I have been there, and he spoke like that. I said, "You come from Indonesia?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Where?" Bandung. And I said, "My brother was there." And but we all were victims. We all had resisted. He said, "I was in the Sukamiskin." So I said, "Did you know my brother?" He said, "Yes." And he was very quiet. And then he says to me, like an excuse, "I only got out because I was 15. Like he had to excuse himself that he had survived. Mm-hmm. But my brother smuggled a note out to family. And in it he said, "I have fought a good fight. Hence is the crown of life is for me." So we know that it was God's will.
Your sister's husband was shot.
My sister's fiancé. He was shot the first war day, May 10. They were all drafted, and he was placed on a little airport outside The Hague. And the parachutist came down 6 a.m. and they shot him. And they have those buddies in dienst. They were both shot. So he was one of the first ones to fall. And she was engaged. This was May 10, and they would have gotten married in September.
Indeed, such sadness, such incredible sadness during those war years. Little children orphaned, good people killed. You think it can ever happen again?
Yes.
How did it happen?
You know what were the worst thing in that prison? They rounded up the Jews, put them in, but every Tuesday and every Thursday night, in the night, they were rounded up out of their cells. And then we heard scream, and it was heartbreaking. Mama, 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 children and parents. And I wrote Hein a letter. I said, "I have to become hard. I can't handle this anymore. I'm cracking up. And he wrote that I may not get hard, but it was very, very difficult.
What a heartfelt and touching testimony shared by Deet Eman today here on Family Talk. I hope her story encouraged you to courageously live out your faith and to help those less fortunate. Learn more about Deet and her heroic efforts during World War II. You can read her autobiography, Things We Couldn't Say, and find a link to that book at our broadcast page at drjamesdobson.org. Now, we know that your home life can be hectic sometimes with kids and work to take care of. Now there's an easy, hands-free way to listen to our daily broadcasts using Amazon Alexa. This device allows you to hear Dr. Dobson's latest interviews while going about your daily routine. Once you enable the Family Talk skill, simply say, "Alexa, play today's broadcast of Family Talk." Learn more about accessing Family Talk on your Amazon Alexa by visiting drjamesdobson.org/Alexa. As we wrap up today's broadcast, I want to let you know how much we appreciate your financial support of this ministry. Family Talk is completely supported by gifts from faithful listeners just like you. The Dobson Family Institute is continuing Dr. Dobson's mission to fight for marriages and families worldwide. And as we grow, we need your help. Go to drjamesdobson.org or call 877-732-6825 to find out how you can stand with us financially and also in prayer. I'm Roger Marsh. Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to tune in again tomorrow for part 2 of Dr. James Dobson's interview with Deet Eman. That's a powerful conclusion to their conversation that you won't want to miss, coming up next time right here on Family Talk.
This has been a presentation of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute.
Hey everyone, Dr. Tim Clinton here for Family Talk. Do you like Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk? Go to our Facebook page, will you, and tell us. You can sign up at drjamesdobson.org, and every day you're going to see threads on issues that matter most to your family. See what's playing on the broadcast, dialogue on topics of faith and family, and find encouragement for your daily life. That and much more at the Family Talk Facebook page. Join the conversation, drjamesdobson.org.
Every now and then, I run across a love story that's worth remembering. Let me share one with you that you may have read about in the Reader's Digest. It began when a man named Kim met a young woman named Chris Ann. Her nickname was Cricket. The two instantly connected, and before long they were courting. In April of 1993, Kim got down on one knee and presented Cricket with a ring, and they were married that September. But 10 weeks later, tragedy struck. A serious car accident left Cricket in a coma. Doctors expected her to die, but to everyone's surprise, she survived. Unfortunately, however, her memory was severely damaged. Through time, she recalled bits and pieces of her life, but the last year was wiped from her consciousness, including all memories of Kim and their wedding. But Kim refused to give up on the bride who considered him a stranger. He decided to win her heart all over again. He started at the beginning, courting Cricket one day at a time. And on Valentine's Day, 1996, 2 years after their wedding, he once again got down on one knee and proposed to Cricket. They renewed their vows in May of that year. In a day when the culture almost beckons us to bail out when things get tough, it was inspirational to see this young couple hang in there and work to rebuild what they had lost. They showed us that love is worth preserving, even in the aftermath of tragedy.
To find out how you can partner with Family Talk, go to drjamesdobson.org.